Hello and welcome to special programming on China's political season. I'm Sally Ayhan in Washington. All eyes are on China as its top legislative and advisory bodies set priorities for the year ahead. We have comprehensive coverage and analysis in the next half hour. Beginning our coverage is CGTN's Sean Callebs in Beijing.
Welcome everyone to a special edition of Global Business here on CGTN. Our focus is going to be China's two sessions. Coming up on the program, we'll examine the work report coming out of the two sessions and also China's continued economic growth. We'll look at the massive effort here in Beijing of going green and also look at the tech revolution with a special focus on artificial intelligence. And there is also growing economic cooperation and significant trade now between Beijing and Latin America. We will have all that and a lot more. Welcome. I'm Sean Callebs in Beijing. We're going to begin on a chilly day here in Beijing. The government work report has been released at two sessions. As is the case every year, it's delivered by the premier. And it really is the primary authoritative document that spells out details and becomes a blueprint for the way China wants to grow and progress in the coming year. Let's take a closer look.
Chinese Premier Li Qiang delivered the government work report at the opening meeting of the fourth session of the 14th National People's Congress, outlining the main development targets for this year. The expected economic growth target is 4.5% to 5%, with efforts aimed at achieving even better results in practices. The report also highlighted other key targets for the year. The target for urban unemployment is around 5.5%, with a goal of creating over 12 million new jobs in cities. The consumer price increase is expected to be around 2%, and residents' income growth will aim to match overall economic growth. The government is also focused on maintaining a balanced international payment situation, while also striving to reduce carbon emissions per unit of GDP by about 3.8%. Premier Li emphasized that these targets were set to allow space for structural adjustments, risk prevention, and reform in the early stages of the year, laying a solid foundation for future growth. These economic targets are aligned with the long-term vision for 2035 and are consistent with China's potential for long-term growth. During the 14th five-year plan, China's economy has grown at an average annual rate of over 5%, with notable improvements in productivity and consumer spending. And this year marks the beginning of China's 15th five-year plan. China is continuing to modernize its governance system and improve its market economy. The country is also expanding its openness, strengthening its international cooperation mechanisms. Additionally, there has been a focus on making people's democracy more institutionalized, while also reinforcing the rule of law. All this highlights China's ability to plan ahead and to ensure steady growth.
For more analysis on the government work report and the state of the Chinese economy, we spoke to several experts. Let's start with Chaz Freeman. He's a former U.S. ambassador and writer.
For the first time, I'm seeing evidence that investors see China as a safe haven for investment, much as they have the United States. They're watching this very closely. Others, of course, are absorbed with the news about the war. But the emphasis on technology development, on a more reasonable rate of growth for the economy, and the management of the currency, its internationalization, as well as its stabilization, or I should say stable change in its value, are all things that people are watching. This makes China attractive to foreign investors. I note that China has now begun to issue dollar-denominated bonds, which are oversubscribed. That is to say, China, which is a net capital exporter, will now be able to attract more capital. I think the role of foreign investment in China has changed. Initially, or I should say for the past decades, much of it was the introduction of technology rather than capital. I think now that is shifting. China is holding its own in the technology area and beginning to be a major exporter of high technology. but it can always use capital, and there are some innovations that foreign companies have to offer that can benefit the Chinese economy.
I think that China has been messaging for a while that the growth would decrease somewhat, and growth has been decreasing slowly in recent years. This is very realistic. There just aren't as many roads, bridges, and houses to build as there were 40 years ago. I think that this target also reflects the aspiration of the Chinese leadership to focus on higher quality growth. I think another important aspect is that a little bit lower rate gives local governments, which are under some pressure, realistic growth rates so that they can better manage their local economies.
I think there's a great deal of more of continuity than difference in terms of where China is going in its terms of its growth model and its development. I think the difference I would say out here is that the Chinese government is looking now to deepen this growth model without the sort of government support and stimulus that it has provided over the past 2 years. It is still going to provide a certain degree of stimulus, both on the production side as well as to consumers. But I think the government feels comfortable at this stage that the economy can run off its own momentum and that it does not require as much government support.
China's two sessions bring together top legislative and advisory bodies to set priorities for the year ahead. There'll be discussions on the economy, international development, global governance, and the future of China-U.S. relations. CGTN's Jim Spellman reports.
As the world's attention turns to two sessions in Beijing, the China-U.S. relationship is relatively steady, dating back to October's meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Donald Trump.
Generally speaking, the bilateral relations can be described as stable, although there will be, flare-ups here and there.
Zhaishan Wang is an analyst at the Center for China and Globalization.
The two countries can manage their relations at a level that is, peaceful and where they can sort out some of their problems and not let those problems, go out of control.
Speaking at the Munich Security Conference in February, China's senior diplomat and foreign minister Wang Yi said the China-U.S. relationship has two potential paths: either work together to manage differences responsibly or move toward a confrontational decoupling of the world's two largest economies.
China, of course, hopes for the first prospect, and I believe everyone shares this expectation. However, we are also prepared to deal with various risks. We believe history always advances through twists and turns. We remain confident in the prospects for China-U.S. relations.
Sentiments echoed by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Okay, it's insane for the United States and China not to have relations and interact with one another. Now, two big countries like this, do we have differences? We absolutely do. And we'll have to manage those differences.
There are potential differences over global conflicts, regional challenges, maintaining the one China principle, and of course, trade, made more uncertain after the U.S. Supreme Court invalidated the legal basis for many of Trump's tariffs.
And right now, there is a lot of uncertainty, and it is very fluid. And I think it's these uncertainties and lack of cohesion certainly undermines the Trump administration's negotiating stance with China and with other economies.
In the U.S., many policymakers will be following events at two sessions closely, including the introduction of the 15th five-year plan.
The people who watch China, who deal with China, whose job is to conduct diplomacy with China, and maybe for U.S. companies and businesses whose products will be competing with Chinese, companies' products, they will watch closely what the Chinese five-year plan will be about.
Maintaining stable China-U.S. relations will likely require both sides to engage actively at all levels, including leader to leader. Jim Spellman, CGTN, Washington.
For more insight into the growth of China's global presence, we spoke with Sean Stein. He's the president of the U.S.-China Business Council.
I was just in Southeast Asia and was amazed that between the 6 months of my visits, just how much more new Chinese investment, Chinese brands, Chinese everything had sort of emerged on the scene. And what I took away from that was it reminded me of when I was young, First, when I was young, Japanese cars were seen as small tin cans, not very high quality, but now they're among some of the best quality cars in the world. And then later, I remember Korean cars were the small, not very reliable, and now they're also have reached that global standard. We're at that tipping point now with China, where China no longer means low quality, cheap products, where around the world, China increasingly means high tech, high quality. When I was just in Europe, I saw Chinese cell phones, Oppo, Xiaomi, Huawei, being out there with sort of every other global brand alongside of Apple. I see Chinese cars and automotive. And so we're at that tipping point, I think, where China is starting to break into the same category.
Well, despite the challenging trade relationship, areas of economic cooperation remain between China and the US. For more, we spoke with Sean Randolph. He's a senior director of the Bay Area Council Economic Institute.
It's really complicated, and it's more complicated than it was in the past. We used to, the Bay Area Council, be very active when we opened our first China offices more than 15 years ago, helping companies from here go into China, get their feet on the ground in the China market. It's a more complicated story now. So we've shifted. We do that. We actually set up a California pavilion every year in Shanghai at the CIIE, the big Shanghai International Import Expo. So we're very committed to that and keeping those channels open. We are still introducing companies from here into China and into the China market. I think we see a real opportunity at the entrepreneurial level. This is the biggest pool of entrepreneurs in the world here in the Bay Area. And we're very familiar with the entrepreneurial environment in China, and there's just a lot of aggressiveness and hard work and creative people. And so there's a lot of respect for what's coming out of China that gets reflected in a lot of technologies, reflected in AI in China, reflected in robotics, reflected in batteries. So I think it's important for us to stay close to and engage with China on these emerging leading edge technologies, on innovation in some of these key fields, because between us and China, that's going to probably set the tune for the rest of the world, and where that opens up opportunities where we're able to collaborate, develop markets together. It's something we want to do. And it's difficult in some fields. There are barriers in semiconductors and barriers in AI, but things around renewable energy, things around climate where we have shared interests, certainly things around health. What about cancer? Cancer rates are rising in China as populations get older, industrial pollution, all of those things. We have high cancer rates here. You could talk about Alzheimer's. You could talk about a lot of health-related products and therapies where we should be able to develop these together. And manage those relationships effectively. So despite the fact that there are more obstacles on the field than there used to be, I think there's still a lot of relatively open doors we need to push on.
China's advancements in technology have grown significantly, especially in the past few years, with a focus on artificial intelligence. And for obvious reasons, AI is going to be one of the linchpins of China's economy moving forward. For more on that, let's turn to our Mark New.
In August, China's State Council published a directive on implementing the AI Plus initiative, a blueprint for developing artificial intelligence domestically and competing internationally. It's already showing up in the private sector during Spring Festival, as major companies distribute red packets that customers access by using AI-driven apps.
The government's initiated the AI Plus initiative, and these are kind of concrete examples that big tech companies are taking actions to try to engage everyday people with advanced AI.
Winston Ma, author of The Digital War, says increased adoption of AI among the population will also serve another purpose: collecting valuable data to enhance AI products and services.
You have more than 1 billion internet users that are integrated by the same language, same culture, and the same mobile payment. So every day, there is tremendous amount of data accumulated at the digital platforms. So the next step is to better utilize the data, organize the data, and put the data into work by AI to generate value.
Value is arriving in the form of intelligent products, oftentimes robots. At the recent CES show in Las Vegas, Chinese companies dominated the exhibition with robots of all shapes and sizes. They not only performed acrobatic movements, but also demonstrated real work.
I think one thing that China is doing very well right now is connecting AI to hardware. So AI to robotics. You can see around here, you see the robot coffee makers, robot cocktail makers. Robots are everywhere doing real things, robot vacuums and pool cleaners. So really using AI to do physical work in the real world is something that China is doing very well.
There will be a huge range of embodied AI, but overall, China has the advantage of the manufacturing prowess, developed during the Made in China expansion the last 3 decades. Essentially, Chinese manufacturing power can be combined with Chinese open source models to develop a huge industry relating to industry robots as well as humanoids.
Ma says 2 sessions may go even further by exploring what's best described as beyond AI. That may include discussions about quantum computing and biomedicine, all part of building the infrastructure of futuristic technology and industries that may come along a lot faster than originally expected due to artificial intelligence. Mark New, CGTN, San Francisco.
For more on China's tech revolution and why it's different, we spoke with Ina Tangen. He's a senior fellow at the Center for International Government Innovation.
What's most interesting to me is high-quality productive forces and how China's approaching it. Really, they're making a massive adjustment here where they're saying that economic growth is important, but it has to be balanced by social goods. And this is the hallmark of a socialist society, that the market forces have to be bent to the good of the people, not to the good of special interests. So it's a very marked departure from perhaps other systems around the world.
Sectors like artificial intelligence and robotics are not just important for China's present, but critical for the country's future. Now here's Andy Mock, Senior Research Fellow at the Center for China and Globalization.
Technology is absolutely crucial for China to achieve not only its short-term economic goals, but its long-term objectives, the 2035 and the 2049 objectives. And here's why. China's development strategy rests on a simple bet. If the country can combine frontier technology with large-scale industrial deployment and coordinated national investment, then these productivity gains from automation, AI, advanced manufacturing can offset the structural headwinds such as aging demographics and external technology restrictions. And that system where governance turns invention into large-scale deployment is what I call the innovation machine.
And one of China's key strategies calls for a green economy. And that means hopefully reaching peak emissions by the year 2030 and carbon neutrality by the year 2060. Now, all of this comes with massive investments in renewable energy as well as electronic vehicles. It also calls for significant investment in new technology that includes solar as well as improving batteries.
On the coast eastern of Yanchuan, known as China's city of offshore wind power, the green energy transition is taking physical form.
Standing by the seaside, the wind keeps blowing in, bringing an endless stream of energy. Each rotation generates the electricity enough for a person to consume for a whole day or even longer. Well, I'll let you do the math, how many rotations it can do, as one wind turbine can work as long as 25 years.
This isn't just about building turbines, it's about building an entirely new energy ecosystem. Green electricity in this coastal city already accounts for more than 2/3 of its power generation. It's a microcosm of a national goal to have non-fossil fuels power a quarter of the country's total energy use by 2030.
China's 2026 is a portrait of a nation in motion. It's a vision built not just on concrete, steel, or aggregates, but on a more complex foundation, the ingenuity of its engineers, the resilience of its people, and a growing commitment to weave ecological thinking into the very DNA of its development. And this is the progress of a vision becoming reality.
Well, China's green revolution is not just happening at home. The country is investing in green tech across the world, and that's going a long way to help reduce emissions. We spoke with several experts on the significance of China's green economy. Take a listen.
I just came back from China about a week ago. I was in Beijing and Shanghai. Anyone who hasn't been there should go and actually see things with their own eyes. It's absolutely remarkable. It is a step into the future. As you said, not only have they absolutely transformed at rapid clip their own country, which is huge, but now they're bringing those new technologies, those more efficient technologies, and the financing to the rest of the region and their neighbors. So they're a remarkable leader, and it's a pleasure to work with them.
So we're seeing very substantial investment in green technology by China and many other countries, and you see that reflected in a big rise in the share of electricity that comes from renewables, for example, which is now up to about 32%. It's really critical that China goes through this transition, both for the world and for China.
Well, there is certainly an opportunity for China here with the U.S. Exiting the stage. And China, of course, has been investing in clean energy and owns a lot of the important supply chains for clean energy.
China has steadily been focusing its attention on the global south, and that includes improving its economic ties and trade with Latin America. It's something important to both regions. For more on that, here's Alistair Baverstock in Mexico City.
Latin America and the Caribbean may have a GDP totaling more than $7 trillion, but many countries lag far behind in development. For observers, China's Global Development Initiative lays down a pathway to replicate the country's own astonishing growth and development in recent decades.
This was an initiative launched by President Xi Jinping at the United Nations in 2021. It is essentially focused on strengthening the sovereignty, development, and international cooperation of nations, strengthening multilateralism.
For Latin America, supporters argue that initiative, along with last year's Global Governance Initiative, offer a framework for digitalization, infrastructure investment, and green energy transition amid an atmosphere of enhanced multilateralism.
It offers broad cooperation in technology transfer and financing the construction of the new infrastructure that will be necessary to achieve Latin America's development goals.
This initiative will be very important as we look to the coming decade. What China seeks is to contribute, calling for cooperation towards the global south, the so-called South-South cooperation. China is the undisputed leader in that regard.
In a time of geopolitical tensions, the initiatives represent a new approach to foreign policy in the region.
China offers cooperation addressing the specific needs of each country in the region. On the other hand, the United States pursues a confrontational foreign policy that seeks to impose sanctions and conditions without offering anything in return.
It's cooperation designed to adapt as it advances.
With each five-year plan, China continues to correct and modify, incorporating new issues and solutions. It's a demonstration of how to adapt to the international reality.
As delegates meet in Beijing, the direction set during the two sessions will help define how far and how fast that development partnership extends across the Pacific. For Latin America, China's Global Development Initiative presents both opportunity and calculation, how to develop sustainably in a multipolar world. Alistair Baverstock, CGTN, Mexico City.
Costa Rica is among the Latin American countries that have strengthened ties with China in recent years. For more, we spoke to Costa Rica's former president, Lauren Chinchilla.
Well, trade and investment between Costa Rica and China have evolved
from minimal interaction to a strong partnership, with China becoming Costa Rica's second largest trading partner. And that happens following the 2011 Free Trade Agreement. This bilateral agreement has allowed our trade to grow at an annual rate since then of about 10% every year. So yes, it has been very important, not only in terms of how trade is growing, but also in terms of giving us the opportunity to diversify our exportable offer. So the general balance is quite positive for both countries, but especially for Costa Rica.
Relations between China and Brazil have been growing from strength to strength, and the two countries are among the founding members of BRICS. Brazilian Congressman Fausto Pinato has more insight.
É um grande exemplo, que é um país que na década de 80, onde o Xiaoping ainda pegou, era um país que era pobre perto da gente, né? Mas com todo o planejamento, né, pujança dos presidentes que passaram, fizeram hoje, através do Xi Jinping, ser uma China respeitada a nível mundial. Quem pode realmente libertar a América Latina e a África dessa grande escravidão é a China.
China's ties with the global south are not just deepening with Latin America, but they're the African continent as well. We spoke with Sunday Dari, Special Advisor to Nigeria's president, about how countries like Nigeria are benefiting from China's investment and technical expertise.
When you look at the Chinese economy, you look at its sheer population in Asia, and I'm speaking to the similarities that we have. Then you look at the African continent, and look at Nigeria's population, of course, 230 million compared to China's. You begin to see similarities in terms of market potentials, in terms of the youth population, in terms of the development and growth that is needed. Nigeria stands to benefit extensively from the experience of China when it comes to youth development, when it comes to infrastructural development, when it comes to agriculture, and even culture itself. And I think those similarities strengthen our bilateral relations.
Well, there certainly are plenty of topics covered and plenty of analysis of China's two sessions there for you. We will, of course, be following how these new policy measures unfold. I'm Sally Ayhan in Washington. Let's go now to Sean Callebs in Beijing one last time.
And that's our program. I'm Sean Callebs here in Beijing. And from all of us, we want to thank you so much for watching.